Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Youth for Water, Steering Water Policymaking in the Mediterranean session. This session will go straight to video, and then you'll be taken through the session by a moderator, Konstantin Sakas from the Center for Mediterranean Integration. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CMI's COP26 session at the Water Pavilion, which is on Youth for Water, steering water policy making in the Mediterranean region. I'm Konstantin Tsakas from CMI. The CMI session will inform and raise awareness on how youth can be drivers of change for better addressing water challenges in the region. And without further ado, I'm very happy to have with us Blanca Moreno-Dodson, Director of CMI, who has an introductory word to say. Blanca, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Constantin, and thank you, colleagues, for attending this session on the last day of the COP26. I'm very, very happy to be with you today, mainly because this is a session particularly well led by the youth, and we are very happy to support it. We have heard over the last couple of weeks about the effects of climate change, and we know that the Mediterranean is a hot spot, and one of the most negative effects shows in the imbalance between water distribution and water insecurity. And as we know, lack of water means more poverty, health deterioration, hunger, unemployment, and forced migration. Let us not forget that the Mediterranean region has over 180 million people who are water poor, and that 3 out of 4 jobs are water dependent. Today, we want to really put the youth at the center of this agenda. And it's not only because they represent 60% of the Mediterranean population, and also they will be our future leaders. It is because today they represent a generation of active entrepreneurs, activists, academics, researchers who can influence decision-making and can bring very good ideas, very innovative ideas to those who implement policy to further help us stabilize the water sector in the region. We believe in their potential, and yet we know that sometimes they struggle to make their voices heard in the region, either because the role is underestimated by senior members making decisions, or because those decision-making channels don't include enough effective collaboration mechanisms to have the youth participate. At the Center for Mediterranean Integration, we continue supporting the youth, and we're very happy to work with our partners, the Union for the Mediterranean, the International Water Management Institute, CWAS, the UK Cooperation, CIREAM, etc., etc., the French Agency for Development, the World Bank. Together, we can help put the youth always at the center of this water agenda, because we believe that they can help us adapt and develop further regional and national strategies to deal with water management. We also believe that capacity building programs that are very much necessary to find smart solutions to water stress and water scarcity can also involve the skills, very much sought after skills of the youth. Some of whom you will hear today directly. So I am going to let them present by themselves their very good ideas. We also believe that promoting and supporting collaborated projects which involve the youth and the governments can be very, very instrumental to achieve results in this region. Yes, youth can be drivers of change. And I want to mention some of the activities that we intend to support: an entrepreneurial e-hackathon that was conducted this year and will continue, e-bootcamp programs, working papers prepared by the youth that are benefiting from the peer reviewing of more experts, more senior water experts, and then finally our Water Heroes contest and World Water Day that was already mentioned in the video. We're very grateful again to all our partners, very grateful for this opportunity to be in the COP26. And I take the opportunity to announce that we are currently working in a study on the water security nexus in North Africa that looks at the links between climate change, resilience, and forced migration, and that is producing some quantitative analysis supported by actual data on where the areas of water stress are located in North Africa. And we look forward to sharing with you some of these results. Again, this is all about listening to the youth, to the solutions that they have to offer, and supporting the youth for more results moving forward, for tangible results moving forward. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Blanca, and thank you for highlighting the importance of collaboration, whether it be knowledge generation, awareness raising, and providing tangible entrepreneurship solutions that emanate from the youth. Before I move on to the first speaker, some housekeeping rules. I'd like to stress that you're all free to post your questions in the YouTube chat, and we have our colleague Ines Gazmi, who we thank for monitoring the chat, that will transfer the questions to us, and hopefully, if we have enough time, we can address all of them. Without further ado, let me move on to the first speaker. We're very pleased to have with us Stephen Mooney, who is Senior Climate and Environment Advisor on the MENA region from FCDO. Stephen will talk about the role of the Water Security Nexus study in mainstreaming regional cooperation. This is an FCDO-funded project piloted by CMI that seeks to provide insights into this complex climate-water migration interrelations. Stephen, you have about 7 minutes. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks very much, Constantine, and thanks very much, Blanca. I'll race through my presentation so we can get to hear to the real experts and hear the youth as drivers of change and their innovations for the region and what we should be doing. So really exciting to hear from them. This program that we've funded, we're very thankful to CMI and IMI for undertaking this. It was funded through our Conflict Stability and Security Fund and our Technical Assistance Facility for North Africa. Obviously, it's been a very complex year, and this work has been done over the pandemic and under difficult circumstances, including the ability to travel. So our thanks goes to everyone who were involved with undertaking the study. Why did we want to undertake the study and work with CMI and IMI on this? Is would the region, especially North Africa, has already experienced 1 to 1.5 degrees of warming. You can already see climate change happening. 60% of the MENA population live in areas which are already high or have extreme high surface water stress. The global average being 35, so you can see so much higher. Even if we, and fingers crossed, we will come to an agreement that we can limit warming to 1.5 degrees, that is still a 1.5 degree warming. So climate change is happening and would still happen. So we need to understand that. We're concerned about water scarcity across the region and the ability to effectively manage that water resource to continue to deliver economic development. And then outside of the water, you have rising temperatures with droughts expected to increase in frequency, and then there will be an expected decrease in rainfall. So all of these climate vulnerabilities showcase the need to undertake studies and look at what the impacts will be and how to inform some of the policy approaches. And within climate change, we're obviously very, very interested in water. It's the defining challenge of the region. MENA is the most water-stressed region in the world. The water is a way of binding communities and governments and nations together. A lot of the resource is a shared water resource, both above ground and below ground. So activity in one area has an influence in another area. There's a potential that if we don't tackle the resource constraints, they may have significant impact. So we need to be looking at solutions now, and we firmly believe that youth and youth innovation is a way of implementing those situations. And we were very interested in studying these interlinkages, and so we're excited about some of the outputs that are coming through this water security, climate change, and migration study. We want to be bound in the evidence base. We want to know what is happening. We want to provide innovative solutions. But a key area for us was the capacity building and the policy exchange that CMI and IMWI have been able to develop, and catalyzing that youth engagement. So it's not just about kind of understanding the research and understanding the data. The capacity element and the key approach to youth engagement was a key approach to us, and something we're very excited about. I can just run through some of the findings that kind of coming up. There's 3 definitely interrelated issues. The drivers of water migration, whether migration is driven by sudden shocks, whether they're environmental due to extreme weather event, or even a shock related to kind of economic shock, if there's a rise in food prices, for instance. The long-term demographic pressure that might be taking place either at a regional or a sub-regional level, including the kind of the need to move for economic opportunities, or whether there is pressures on kind of land tenure and access rights due to growing demographic pressures. And then some of the cultural and contextual factors that can underlie the decision to migrate, whether that's a decision that is in the long-term or short-term migration, including equitable access, but also the ability of institutions to adapt to climate change and longer term, and how they integrate those climate impacts into decision making. And we didn't want this to be just a desk-based survey, so we're really excited that some of the case studies that have taken place in Tunisia and Morocco to understand these dynamics and set out an analytical framework. There is lots of findings that are quite exciting, and I think one of the interesting ones is Mediterranean countries, including those of North Africa, making use of economic instruments and how they can play a right role in providing the incentives to guarantee effective decision making and also appropriate management of a valuable natural resource, and how this can drive greener behavior. So I think looking at those economic instruments, the use of the private sector and appropriate subsidy reform is something that is kind of key to moving forward. And then something kind of directly related, I think, to the capacity strengthening and the youth element, and something we're very keen to hear from our youth stakeholders is public participation. Public participation is essential for effective water management and adaptive water management, but frequently maybe that public participation doesn't follow through into policy decisions, and we need to kind of work on how we strengthen that process. As we say, this is a youth event, and I think some of the challenges will be outlined by some of our youth participants probably better than I can. But we know that through the study there is some of the access to financial resources, maybe the kind of the restricted mobility and the ability to share lesson learning, the lack of engagement and linking back that participatory approach may mean that the youth voices are often overlooked, and this can restrict the kind of the appropriate management of the water resource. And we as policy makers then need to be able to give youth the space to develop the skills and experience, both in old traditional jobs and bringing new technologies, but also in the new job sector and in tech innovation and those areas. And we need to facilitate the kind of and this is why it's great that IMWI and CMI are involved, but that facilitating that engagement between youth and academia, and then also the lesson learning across the region. So kind of just as a wrap up and to hear from the more interesting participants, why we were interested in it was to strengthen the evidence base, to know what we should be doing. We were particularly interested in bringing key stakeholders together, including youth, to facilitate that dialogue and the lesson learning. And one of the reasons we're interested, and also related to the climate impacts, is a shared water resource, both at a national and a transboundary level, and we're looking at water governance to bring people together, to cope with the impacts of climate change, but also to develop in a more economic, sustainable way. And then we were also very interested in this innovation process around youth, including the hackathon. So delighted and very much looking forward to hearing from Hannah and others about what has taken place within it. But I'll stop there and look forward to hearing from everyone going forward.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for your presentation. And as you rightfully said, it's very important to facilitate the implication of youth on the policymaking process, facilitate their mobility, facilitate their access to funding opportunities, and so on. And particular thanks for sharing these preliminary events from the FCDO-funded study. Without further ado, let me move on to Alan Lickel. Alan is Strategic Director of Water, Growth and Inclusion at the International Water Management Institute. Dear Alan, we're entering a new era of risk and vulnerability that is both accelerating the movement of people and increasing risks involved in migration. And at the heart of this process, we have younger generations that seek employment and a better life. So you will be talking about the need for including those youth in the water security migration nexus in the Maghreb region. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Constantine. Can you see my slides?
We can, yes, perfectly.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I will put it on slide share. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So I've been asked to say a little bit about the need to include youth in water security migration nexus in the Maghreb region. I just wanted to note this is an important day on transboundary cooperation and climate security. So, you know, the regional dimension is extremely important. Our piece of work actually focused specifically on Morocco, looking at the experience in Morocco. But it's joining up with another piece of work being undertaken in Tunisia. So we hope to have a broader regional perspective going forward. First slide, well, you know, this is a dynamic global context. You know, it's the biggest generation in history out there at the moment. We're told it's 1.8 billion people. And of those, about 250 million migrants, of which about 10% are under 24. So the scale of this challenge, that's global, of course, but as you heard from Blanca, in the region, there are many millions of migrants, and a large proportion are youthful. So when looking at these issues of climate change, water and migration, we've got to consider the scale, consider the rapid demographic transitions taking place. On the right-hand side, you'll see there Morocco's population pyramid in 1980, how it's transitioned to now, 2020. So you'll see this growth in the economically active population, which represents demand for jobs, represents demand for employment out there, and that's one of the key drivers of migration. The question that, of course, is critical here is how does that intersect with the relationship to climate and water resource management? And there have also been, in that period of time, those 40 years, huge transitions in economic activity in countries like Morocco, reshaping the reshaping of a new kind of agricultural development as well in the country. So if you look at rural population as a percentage of total population, this has been declining steadily over time across the region. So one element of that pressure on resources, of that access challenge, of that modernization of economies has been the reduction in the proportion of population that is in rural areas. And alongside that, you've had growth in other sectors of the economy. So services, for example, in the Middle East and North Africa and Maghreb region particularly, have been increasing in proportion as a total proportion of employment in economies. So there's a changing nature of the economic structure of development in the region. And again, you know, these are really critical features of the last 20 years. Alongside that is this, and of course, as Blanca mentions, we've had this enormous great climate emergency coinciding with, but of course not linked to these transitions. Big issues there, of course, in COP26 about who's responsible for this enormous great increase in average temperatures since the end of the 20th century, particularly. But the signal that's sent through to the MENA region, the Maghreb region, has been enormous in terms of declining rainfall, in terms of climate risk. Alongside that, though, we've had these population changes, we've had these economic shifts. So what is really critical here is the nexus, precisely that connection between these different elements, and how modernization and policy on agriculture in countries like Morocco has changed demand for example, groundwater in the plains of the Souss Mesa basin. So there's been an enormous change in demand for the resource, partly policy related, but connected also to the changing rainfall regimes in a country like Morocco. So connected to these growing dynamics in the job market, growing demographic dynamics, are these growing water resource management dynamics, again, driven partly by the climate crisis, partly by the growth in population and the economic growth in a country like Morocco or Tunisia. So what's critical here is the intersection of these systems, the social, the economic, and the environmental, on top of which is this enormous climate change emergency. So really, I'd say this is an unprecedented moment in the region for youth, for governments, and for policymaking. The outmigration phenomenon from rural areas, but also from countries of the region, also has to be seen in the context of in-migration to the region from other parts of Africa, sub-Saharan, Sahelian Africa. So there are very important connections between these systems, and it's a key finding in a sense of our work, that you need to look at migration in a more interconnected, intersystemic manner and understanding between different regions. So you'll have in-migration from Sahelian areas where there's serious impact on agriculture as well, where there's conflict, where there's political conflict, into the Maghreb region. And the need to distinguish between different kinds of migration is also critical. The short term, short distance, the longer term, long distance migration, the rural to urban, the urban to urban, and then the country to another country movement, so the international movement as well. So the typologies, the understandings of different kinds of migration is really critical. It's also key to look at the gender characteristics of migration, which have been very marked in a country like Morocco. In the last 20 years, more younger women have been part of the migration community. And not everything's about income. This is also another point that's been mentioned already, but it's very important to understand the connections between migration decision-making, why people want to move, and non-economic, non-livelihoods related factors. So although climate translates through the water cycle into social effects, there are other things too. Politics, political economy, which has been part of the work we've been looking at in the region, also plays an important factor. How much voice do people have in local governance? How much of that is connected to their agency, their interest in being agents of their own change, of their own development? So it's really important to understand these interconnections between the economic side, but also the social and political side. So how we place climate within this is really as an accelerator and a multiplier of effects, whether it's through the hydrological cycle, whether it's through perceptions of risk in rural communities by farmers, but also how does it connect up in terms of decisions by farmers to invest in particular technologies, groundwater pumping being one area where perceived risk is rising due to rainfall variability and decline over time.
Alan, may I ask you to wrap up?
Last couple of slides.
Thank you.
So we've put together an analytical framework to try and work through this, to understand this, to apply it in different contexts. In Morocco, in two parts, in the Souss Mesa and the Rabia Basin, really trying to understand the feedback loops. And we've also started thinking through what kind of policy responses are necessary here, building the voice of youth and migration into governance of migration, definitely, but also thinking through economic coherence, policies that connect up more effectively, agriculture, water security, managing transitions, and a socio-political response as well. So engagement of youth, policy structures that are more coherent and integrated, and also building the voice and opinion of youth into decision-making structures around migration, but also about understanding the impacts of climate change. That's it. Back to you, Konstantin.
Thank you very much, Alan, for presenting this framework. Without further ado, I will move on to Fatin Esbake. So very happy to have the youth here with us today. Fatin is a senior research associate at the University of Geneva, and she's also coordinator of the Mediterranean Youth for Water Network, MEDIWAT. Fatin will show a practical example of the benefits of a youth water network, which is built around knowledge creation and sharing. And this example comes from her experience in this CMI-supported MEDIWAT network, which was born as a platform for connecting, for engaging, and impacting young water professionals in the Mediterranean. Fatin, very happy to have you here with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Constantine, for the introduction. And also I want to thank CMI for inviting me to join this session, as well as to both IUCN and the UN Seawater Convention for convening this final day on transboundary cooperation and climate security. I'm really happy to be with all of you today, even if it's in virtual mode. So starting, I want to say that if there's something that has become very clear in the last 2 weeks, and I think it's mainly thanks to the Water Pavilion, is that water and climate change are interconnected and linked. But there's something more important that is now quite evident, is that solving water and climate change issues requires collaboration and cooperation, but especially the meaningful participation of many different stakeholders as local communities, women and youth. And today's session, as you've seen, is focusing on these last elements, the youth, and the two previous speakers have already talked about why we need to include youth when addressing the water security nexus in the Mediterranean. But on my side, I want to show a practical example of how we can do it. And as Constantine said, this example comes from my experience in the Mediterranean Youth for Water Network, a network known as MEDIWAT and born in 2017 in Marseille, France, with the support of CMI. So let me start by explaining what we mean by young water professionals, because this is the key element of our network. And as you see, young water professionals has 3 different elements. The first one, the young, it's because we are people in our 20s and mid-30s that are, let's say, in the early career or mid-career levels of their professional lives. Then the second element is the water, and we have the water here because it's the common denominator of our work. Each one of us works on the water field from different perspectives, but we all have this thing in common. And last but not least, there is the professional elements, and this is important to highlight because we are all working actively and solving and trying to solve water-related issues. And in fact, what sparked the birth of a network of young water professionals in the Mediterranean is the gap we saw in the water sector. We noticed that we had many well-prepared and motivated young water professionals, but they lack a platform for doing 3 things that we think are key for empowering these young professionals in the water sector. The first thing is to connect, because we think that by building bridges between young professionals working on water issues across countries and from diverse backgrounds and disciplines is important to empower them in the sector. The second is to engage, because we also think that having these now connected young water professionals engage, it's a good way to create and share knowledge and best practices. And the last element is to impact, because we think that having these now engaged young water professionals work together is the best way to build capacities, amplify their voices, and ultimately impact the regional water agenda. And as I said, we started in 2017 as an experience sharing platform, but we rapidly became a knowledge co-production platform. And in MEDIWAT, this knowledge co-production happens in different ways. And I just want to give some specific examples. The first way we do knowledge co-production is by working together in research articles and policy briefs. So every year, with the support of CMI, our members work together on a series of working papers, and we have a mentorship initiative aimed at helping these members produce analytical work on water-related topics in a collaborative manner. Then the second way we do is joining entrepreneurship bootcamps that I believe Hannah will explain in more detail. And again, with the support of CMI and this time also with CWAS Middle East, our members have been working together in developing concrete entrepreneurs to tackle different water and climate change related issues in the region. And the last way we do to achieve this knowledge co-production is by developing collaborative projects between the members. And I want to highlight that this development really follows a bottom-up rationale. And we had successful projects that have received funding, including one by IHE Delft Institute for Water and Education that dealt with smart and affordable technologies in 2 countries of the Mediterranean. We also have a PRIMA-funded project that tries to build a collaborative platform for data sharing in agriculture. And members have also acquired a grant for a startup incubator to develop a prototype for household wastewater treatment. So as you can see, there are different ways that we follow to create and share knowledge, but they all have one thing in common, is that they can be a tool for developing the capacity of our young water professionals, but most importantly, for creating a community. And this community can help these professionals to feel empowered in this sector. And before concluding, I just want to share with you 2 main lessons we have learned in this past 4 years of experience in Mediwatt. The first lesson is that being part of a platform for and by young water professionals is key for strengthening their capacities. In the case of Mediwatt, as I said, it's by fostering interdisciplinarity, innovation, partnerships, and policy relevant research. But another lesson, and it's the other side of the coin, is that making such a platform sustainable requires support. And by support, I don't mean only financial resources, but especially non-financial. And in our case, in the case of Mediwatt, we have been lucky to have CMI support most of our activities. But still, young water professionals networks such as Mediwatt and many others need more and constant support to achieve the ultimate goal of having young water professionals as active stakeholders and also participate in decision-making processes in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatin, for sharing how important it was to fill this gap in the region where young water professionals used to lack a strong network to share their knowledge, experiences, and so on. And now, thanks to you, they have this. As you said, young experts can help create knowledge, but are also, of course, generators of concrete entrepreneurial solutions. And this is where Hannah comes in. We're very happy to have Hannah Wiesel with us, who is project manager at CWAS. And who will talk about the type of concrete solutions that are provided by the Water and Climate Change Entrepreneurship Program that include several things: a dashboard that helps to manage the water intake of crops, an EcoSmart manageable watering system, a mobile app for farmers. Hannah, we're very excited to have you here with us and to learn more about all these entrepreneurial activities. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Constantin, for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you and to share our experiences with the Water and Climate Change Entrepreneurship Program. I trust that you can see my screen. So let me dive right in. I think what I wanted to start with was an overview of the challenges that the Mediterranean region is facing due to climate change and its connection to water, which includes unemployment, which includes severe impact on food security in the region. But I believe that my colleagues have already provided an incredible overview of this. So I'm going to dive right in with an overview into the entrepreneurship program that we have been conducting since June last year together with the CMI and the Mediwatt teams. Our goal with this program was really to create needed entrepreneurial solutions for real-life problems that are tackling actual challenges that are linked to climate change and water in the Mediterranean region. Now, we focused on a very specific segment of the population in the Mediterranean region because we believe that they are agents of change, that they really have the tools and the knowledge to tackle those challenges proactively, which are young people between the ages of 18 and 35. led of course by the Mediwatt members and by winners of the Water Hero contest, but the participation in our program is also open to other engaged youth from the region. You can see an overview of our target countries here. So we try to really recruit from all of those countries to make sure that we have a very inclusive pool of participants. And interestingly enough, for many of the participants that joined us, it was their first time participating in such a program, and it was their first attempt at building an entrepreneurial solution. So we tried to match the teams based on experience, skills, background, and you know, some of them turned out to be quite random with lots of different geographical distribution. But we noticed throughout the course of the program that even if it was a randomly composed team, they actually bonded very quickly over the shared challenges that they're facing in their daily lives that are often connected to unemployment, climate change, water, and generally the state of the region as we speak. So what we try to do is come in and tackle those challenges through innovation. So some of the components that we've been using to trigger and foster innovation include the 4 components that are mentioned here in the scale. First one is applying existing knowledge that is already available in the region. There's a wealth of research that has been mentioned earlier that tackles how climate change could be solved, how it could be addressed, and how this research can actually be applied in real-life solutions. Secondly, of course, solving problems. So it's not just so much about trying to build solutions for no actual real-life problems, but we really wanted to identify those real-life problems and targeting the solutions to that. Thirdly, scaling solutions that may already exist elsewhere, and then also, of course, bringing them to other regions, and creating communities, creating best practices and lessons learned together. When we picked the challenges, we wanted to be quite precise. So what we actually did was crowdsourcing those challenges. As an organizing team, we decided not to dictate what the teams are supposed to be working on, but we gave them the option to choose between those 3 challenges. The first one being mitigation solutions for climate change impacts on water resources and food security. The second one being urban wastewater management. And the third one, of course, was 2020. So the link between WASH and COVID. Again, all of those solutions were proposed by Mediwatt members, and then the teams were created around those challenges. This is a little overview of how our entrepreneurship program has been conducted. So we started in June 2020 with an e-hackathon, leading to an e-bootcamp with sort of the strongest teams that emerged out of the e-hackathon. And now currently we're in the middle of a startup program, and we're working with the final teams that are still tackling their solutions a year and a half later. In the e-hackathon, we had 43 participants in total. We had 10 solutions that were proposed that those teams were working on. And we had representation from 13 countries, and we worked for 48 hours with very little sleep, actually, on designing actual entrepreneurial approaches to around those solutions. The e-bootcamp started subsequently. So what we did here was really dive into more depth of components of how to build a business, ranging from promotion, marketing, finance, and so on. We worked with 8 teams. 4 of them made it to the end of the e-bootcamp. So here it's important to mention that we apply sort of a funnel methodology. So entrepreneurship is definitely not for everyone, and we don't want to force this as a career path on anyone. So we really worked with the teams to see who's actually serious about taking their solutions to the next level. Also, we provided grants of more than $6,000 to those teams, to those 4 finalists, to make sure that they can implement their MVPs, their minimum viable products. This has now culminated into the entrepreneurship program, which is currently ongoing. We're also working with 6 modules here. To differentiate it from the bootcamp and from the e-hackathon, this process is much more interactive. So we have those 6 modules, but they're steered by the teams themselves. So we're working with them to check where their priorities lie, where their weaknesses lie, what challenges they're facing, and how we can proactively help them either through our mentors and coaches or by bringing in external resources. We're still working.
You have 1 minute left. Could you please focus a bit on the projects themselves so that we see the solutions you provide? Thank you.
Sure. So I was actually going to get there. So we have 3 teams left that we're working with right now. The first one is Team Optimo, who are based out of Egypt. Actually, most of their team members in Egypt, but some of them also in other countries. And it's a dashboard for water management analysis, which can be connected to water pipelines and water meters. All of this is targeted for small and medium scale farms in Egypt to allow them to be more aware of their water consumption. Secondly is Farmet, who are working primarily in Tunisia, and it's a web application with which they try to make the selling and purchasing of agricultural equipment, starting with seeds, more secure and more tangible. Thirdly, we have Equidai, which is an eco-smart manageable watering system. They're currently focusing on the French market, and they're trying to make it accessible for any household to grow produce at home using this device, which helps them measure their water and irrigation activities. So here are some, just before I wrap up, here are some pictures from our startups in action. I'm more than happy to link to the respective profile pages on social media through the YouTube channel. But you can see here up, for example, in the left corner, our Optimo team sitting at the farm in Egypt and working with the farmers to test their prototype. You can see the Farmet team, which is here in Tunisia, currently working with vendors and collecting the seeds for their first purchases. And lastly, our Equidai team's MVP of an urban gardening kit. Sorry for going over time, Constantin. Just really quick, what's next? It takes a village to raise a child. I think the same goes for companies. So we're very much looking to engage support and to raise support for those teams. If you're interested in working with us, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for this very exciting presentation. And do feel free to share any information you have on social media. We would be happy to all follow these exciting entrepreneurial initiatives. Last but not least, let's have the regional policy view. We're happy to have with us Almotaz Abadi, who's the Managing Director of UFM Water. As you might know, the UFM is an intergovernmental organization of 42 member states from Europe and the Mediterranean Basin. And Almotaz will give us his perspective about the UFM experience in youth involvement on water issues and green entrepreneurship. And then after that, we hopefully can have a few minutes to take questions. Almotaz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, my friend Constantin, for giving us the opportunity to be part of this consortium. I am very happy to be with the CMI-led activity always, and congratulations for the great work. And I'm more happy also to be part of the team who are following the MIDAWAT, the Mediterranean Network for Youth on Water, with CWAS and IWM. The Union for the Mediterranean, as said, is an intergovernmental organization working together between the European 27 member states and the other 15 countries from the South and East Mediterranean, working together in order to enhance the socio-economic reality in the Mediterranean region by focusing on issues related to the best practices, as well as the best harnessing on its potential, acknowledging the situation that in our region remain very complex and multifaceted. The region is facing a socio-economic, climate, environment, governance, and security challenges. An overarching problem in the major part of the region is that women and men, boys and girls, young people are living in a conflict-prone society where the lack of access to socio-economic rights and possibility that are highly impacted by negative effect of climate change, environment degradation, as well as water scarcity, which further destabilize the entire region in the southeast, as well as it will affect, as we believe, on the north, if we don't do the collective approach. With having all of these issues, the Union for the Mediterranean, through partners and studies, also has identified the region as the most regional economic integration, the least one in the world. The program has identified the following are the core problem: unsustainable use of natural resources, as well as mentioned by our great Director CMI Blanca, that it is a hotspot when it comes to the climate change, which jeopardize access to water, food, and energy, and accelerate desertification and loss of biodiversity, further treating lives and livelihood in a very uncomfortable and non-affordable manner. On the other hand, the lack of sufficient investment for sustainable use, management, and access of natural resources such as water, land, and sea is therefore a significant hinder for progress in the region, along with lack of equal access to such investment and such financial resource that surely negatively affect on the access to income generation and employment opportunity, as well as putting more than 60% of the population without job. Here I'm talking about youth, because according to studies that they are contributing to 60% of the community in our region, in the Mediterranean region, especially in the north, in the MENA, Middle East and North Africa, as well as they are lacking 30% of unemployment, which is a huge waste of potential in the Mediterranean. But at the same time, amidst of these challenges, we had noticed that there are a lot of opportunity in case we start working together, in case we could manage to engage all civil society members, engage the youth and harness on the youth potential in order to solve this problem by following sustainable innovation, economic growth, and employment generation. And when it comes to this angle that the Union for the Mediterranean is working, when it comes to the sector that I am working here, the water sector, it was really identified that one of the potential sector that will create jobs. And to do so, we focus according to the UFM Ministerial Declaration and the UFM Water Agenda on two levels to tackle the socio-economic aspect related to the water sector. The first one is to best manage our water sector from when it comes to the narrative of sustainable investment and financing and the best use of internal resources. And the second part, to follow the innovative approach, which is here we talk about the entrepreneurship, which seen by the Union for the Mediterranean as part of the solution, as it is a mechanism through which a positive contribution can be made to overcome two problems. By having youth find and create employment opportunity while contributing to minimize the impact of water scarcity and lack of access to affordable water services. This, and we recognize, I see that I've been notified that I have 2 minutes. I am going to conclude now, that this can be achieved by not only making programs here and there. We need to encourage it by creating an incentive and technical know-how to youth and enable them to become entrepreneurs. There are programs here and very, very important. I am part of all of these hackathon things, which are very essential. And I start learning a lot about how to create the water sector productive when it comes to the job creation by supporting entrepreneurial. So the UFM Secretariat is working on to institutionalize this process. So now we are studying through a consultant from the United States to help us, Mr. Khalid Zidane, to help us on how to set up a mechanism where the young people, but this is an exercise that we need to consult. We will start consulting with the young people based on the survey that we receive their contribution. So the next year, 2022, will be more work on that, but we will follow the consultation with you all around the table, including the Midawat, in order to address the main problem. The first one, how to bring technical skills and know-how, how to tackle the lack of seed funding to enable entrepreneurial on the water sector, how that we can cooperate and engage all segments of civil society, private sector, and enhance the corporate social responsibility, and to to fill the issue related to the fragmentation of efforts. I am at the Union for the Mediterranean. I'm talking to you now about a program. I know that many of you is not hearing about it, but we are trying to have the study, and then we will start disseminating the study toward establishing a more sustainable mechanism for entrepreneurial. And we think it's time to make the young people establish their entrepreneurial institution in the Mediterranean, and we are ready to engage on this politically as well as financially through our donor. With this, I thank you very much, and I will be sharing with you more information through our great Konstantin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Almotaz, for this very thorough presentation. We are running out of time, but let me take one question that I saw in the chat from Cyril, who asks Stephen. Says that, as you rightfully said, Stephen, Mediterranean policymakers should support and empower their youth in driving the transformation to improve water security in the region. Does the FCDO-funded study suggest concrete ways to achieve this? So, if you could answer that in about a minute, and then we can move on with a final word from Branka. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully my video will turn on. And thanks for the question. I guess the study is still being finalized with CMI and IMWI, so we hope to see some of those kind of concrete actions kind of really come out. But I think what we've seen in terms of the e-hackathon and those innovation areas kind of really show mechanisms where we can kind of bring in the youth and put them firmly in a place where they are delivering on some of the climate solutions that are needed as key stakeholders. So I think it's about kind of setting up and creating that kind of dialogue, and hopefully this kind of Mediterranean-wide dialogue as well, where it's not just situated in North Africa, so we can learn lessons across the piece. Some of the regions will be more water stressed and more climate than the others, and will be ahead of the game, and it's important that we can share lessons both kind of north and south and north and east and west. So like I think that's one of the interesting things that may come out, but Alan might have more to say on that.
Can I, Konstantin, very quickly? Briefly?
Yes, you would have about 30 seconds, but yes.
Micro point, yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think it's about engaging youth in policy processes, actually, design of policy, bringing youth in, youth parliaments, councils, whatever you want to call it. But they have to be in these policy processes from the beginning, because they do, they are, in a sense, the future of policy in the region. So I think there's a way, or there should be a way, of bringing them into policy processes, whether it's on migration or climate or economic policy or industrial policy or agricultural policy or even water management. I think there's a desperate need to include youth voices and power within policy processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. I was just informed by the organizers that they kindly let us to have 5 extra minutes, which is actually great, because I can ask one more question. I will ask the question to Anna. Hannah, water, energy, food security, these are issues that are closely interlinked in the region. Of course, I was wondering, such interconnections that may arise are an example of why we need nexus solutions. This is something that we've been working on a lot at CMI, and the knowledge component to respond to these challenges. So I was wondering, the entrepreneurial program that you talked about, how is this nexus dimension reflected within it? Could you give us some concrete examples? Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Yes, definitely. So of course the Nexus plays into this greatly. What we've first of all also noticed when we were crowdsourcing the challenges that our teams are tackling is that it's really not possible to cluster them, whether it's purely water, whether it's purely wash versus COVID, or purely waste management. So we had a lot of feedback that there's quite a bit of interlinkages and that there might be several components of the challenges that are being addressed here. And I think, in my opinion, it always goes hand in hand, you know, to look at the bigger picture. So there may be a core problem that we're facing, but then the impacts of this problem and the implications that this has on the communities where it's occurring, it goes much faster than this, and it interlinks, in my opinion, quite significantly. So the solutions that can address those challenges equally, they're quite, I think, multifaceted. So ranging, for example, from innovations in food production to reduce water usage, all the way to the sustainable use of energy and water on farms, or energy innovations that are used to process food and to arrange logistics. These are the types of solutions I think that we currently need, and these are the solutions that we're looking for example, this entrepreneurship program. So I hope this answers your question, but I think the interlinkage is definitely there, and definitely being addressed, I think, by our teams.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Hannah, for your response. And now a final word from Blanca to conclude this very exciting session. Blanca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Constantin. It's hard to summarize the richness of this session, but I think it illustrates how our institutions and us individually need each other, complement each other. I want to thank Hannah and Fatine for their expertise and energy that they have provided to this session. I was very happy to hear from Stephen about the interest to continue conducting this analysis, not only on North Africa, but Northwest and North, South, and East, West. Thank you, Almotas, for highlighting the interest of the Union for the Mediterranean to institutionalize some of these initiatives, and we will be with you to work particularly on entrepreneurship. Thank you, Constantin, for an excellent moderation. Thank you, Alain, for your expertise and for partnering with us also on concluding our study that will enlighten all of us by providing new data on climate situations in different regions of North Africa. And I really hope that we continue together. Thank you so much to all the participants, and see you soon.